Hello everyone,
Hello,
I'm Andy.
Dr. D.
Today we want to talk to you about the sweet potato.
This thing.
It's a superfood and we want to talk to you about all the nutritional benefits
You're
of this
talking
wonderful
baloney.
superfood.
That's not a superfood. Well, we have to find out why.
So wait a minute, you're saying it's not a superfood?
Oh, forget it. There's such a nutritional baloney out there. Everybody's repeating that this thing has, what did you say when you were researching?
Well, it's very high in vitamin A.
500% of RDA in a
I read
portion.
as much as 780.
That's true, but you know what they was talking about? 2 portions, not just one portion. Not
Oh.
just one portion.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, but nobody just eats one little portion. You eat two
but what's
portions.
one portion?
I don't know, like a cup?
No. One portion is 3.5. This is 7 inches. And unfortunately, this is not even one portion. Size matters. It's not even one portion. 5.5 inches, which is a little bit like that. This is one portion of the sweet potato. So they claim this is actually 284% of RDA of vitamin A. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Do you know how much really vitamin A in there is?
Zero.
0. Yes,
Yeah.
0. Yeah, it's not that they are lying,
But it's beta carotene.
it's beta carotene.
And that easily converts in your liver to vitamin A.
No, that's not true. Like,
Of course it does. It says
you know what? They thought previously that it goes 1 beta carotene, 1 vitamin A. It doesn't work like that.
that's right. It's actually 2-to-1.
No, the conversion, baloney. Conversion is 3 to 9%. That's it. So you get 100% of beta carotene, and you end up actually only with 3 to 9% of vitamin A equivalent, and that is not
But that's
factored
not very
in
much.
the nutritional profile.
That's not very much. then.
No, that means you just have to divide it at least by 10. That's what it is. So
Okay.
so
Okay, then I'll just eat
so
10 times
on
as much.
on paper, the conversion of vitamin A, beta carotene to A is just straightforward, but not in our bodies. It's a completely different animal. So 3 to 9% the most. That's not very high.
So how many sweet potatoes would I have to eat to get sufficient amount of vitamin A?
Oh, that's even, you see, you complicated it completely, because then we're talking about your absorption. You know, the conversion is one thing, but there is also an absorption. An absorption of beta carotene, which is taking place in the intestine, is not high either.
Oh.
It's from 5 to 65%, which means you're only absorbing the most half of beta carotene that is in the sweet potato. You know why? Because sweet potato is a complex carbohydrate. It's a very complex matrix, and a beta carotene is not that easily found by the enterocytes, by the gut enzymes, and extracted and absorbed. It's not that easy. But you see, absorption rate, that 5 to 65% absorption rate is only valid if you add fat into the food. If you don't add fat, you need about 2.5 grams for beta carotene to be properly absorbed. If you don't add fat to your carbs, and then if you add carbs to your carbs, that tastes very good, but then it makes you put on weight. So you start thinking maybe that's not a good strategy. But you need fat in order to absorb beta carotene. So now think about it.
Okay.
No, they say nearly 300% of vitamin A. But the truth is, when you factor in absorption, which is 5 to 65%, you factor in conversion, which is 3 to 9%, you actually end up with
Zip.
zip. And I thought, this is impossible. Just how is it that this information is blown out of the proportion? I thought, hey, but there are people who eat a lot of sweet potato.
Right.
Yeah?
Yeah, then let's look at the cultures that eat a lot of them, and you'll see that they're very high in vitamin A.
I did. I
Right.
know how you thinking. So I went online and I checked what are the biggest consumers of sweet potatoes. And Angola and Tanzania came up first. They eat about 100 pounds of sweet potatoes every year. You'll think that's a lot, because in North America we eat only 6 pounds a year. That's very little. So you think in Tanzania and in Angola there should not be any vitamin A deficiency. Meanwhile, in North America there should, because of how much we eat of the sweet potatoes. Guess what? In North America we don't have any vitamin A deficiency, nothing much to talk about, but in Tanzania and Angola it's about 70% of vitamin A deficiency prevalence. Doesn't that make you think that there's something wrong with this superfood vitamin A and sweet potatoes? How come then people who eat the most sweet potatoes are actually the most vitamin A deficient? Either the conversion rates are not right, or this is just the lab numbers, or vitamin A is not really that potent in sweet potatoes. What do you think?
All of the above. Okay, so then vitamin A is a squash. A wash.
It's a wash. It's a wash. Didn't you tell me that a lot of you read?
However, okay, so vitamin A, let's forget about that. Let's move on.
Let's move on.
But they are high in nutrients in general.
Which
There's
ones?
a lot of B vitamins, vitamin E, and a lot of minerals. All kinds of minerals in there.
Oh, that's what they say. You
Yeah.
probably wrong. You read the wrong reports. Okay.
No, I read Google.
Google, the first page, right? This is where all the important things are, right? I read on the 5th page.
Oh,
On the 5th page. You
I
have to
didn't
go
make
that
that
far.
far.
Yeah. Where you actually have the sources. So let's see. They say vitamin B6. And you probably are referring to vitamin B6 because they say sweet potatoes are very high in vitamin B6. And in fact, one portion is about 10%. Again, lab numbers.
Right.
10% of vitamin B6 in the servings of the sweet potatoes. But you know what it means? That means in order for you to get RDA from the sweet potatoes, which is the daily allowance of the sweet potatoes, you have to have at least 5 cups of it. Now, 5 cups, that's a lot of carbohydrates.
that's like
Well,
10 servings then.
yeah, that's about 10 servings. And in order to get other nutrients, like if you want to get other vitamin B complex, vitamin B1, B2, etc., you need to eat at least 10 cups of it. 10 cups. 10 cups is everything that we eat throughout the entire day, and the average person eats 10 cups of all the foods. But that will not be enough for you to get zinc or heme iron or B12. You need to eat at least 25 cups of sweet potatoes every day, which means even if you eat up to this much, you're completely satiated and you can't eat even more, you'll be nutrient depleted. There's not enough nutrients in sweet potato.
Deficient.
Yeah, you'll be nutrient deficient. Yes, yes. No, sweet potatoes are not superfoods. They do not have a lot of nutrients.
So they do have a lot of variety, just in very small amounts, and then you got to factor in bioavailability,
Yes, absorption
and conversion.
or utilization, whatever.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of this to think about. But you think about the essential. What is it that we humans we do need? There are essential nutrients and there are non-essential nutrients. And among essential nutrients, the macronutrients are proteins and fats. Proteins, fats. There's nothing in sweet potatoes.
Starch.
There's only starch and
Which is not an essential nutrient.
carbs are not essential nutrients, right? So sweet potatoes will supply you with something you don't need, but something you need you won't have.
It's starting to sound a lot more like a cheap filler.
Totally. I think somebody's making good money on selling sweet potatoes.
Is that what it is?
Probably. Yeah.
So, if that's the case, they're not high in nutrients. They are high in antioxidants, at least, though.
Yeah, again, the lab numbers I checked, apparently there's some phenolic acid in it, and they talk about a number of antioxidants, but they don't seem to be translating into antioxidant activity in the human body, just in actually the lab alone. And if you think that sweet potato is supposed to be a super antioxidant food, it is not. It is just as good as an apple. You know, I really want to point this out because brain foods, a lot of people as we are aging and people thinking about Alzheimer's disease and all central nervous system and dementias, we want brain foods. Does sweet potato have brain nutrients? And No, it doesn't. It doesn't have zinc. It doesn't have selenium. It doesn't have protein. It doesn't have carnosine, B12. None of that. And you think that if this is the case, if it doesn't have brain foods, then maybe it won't help with schooling. Maybe it won't help with proper aging of the brain. And again, I was thinking, what happens with people who eat a lot of sweet potatoes? How is their IQ? I don't know. I cannot make an extrapolation, but I do check. I check. It's Angola, it's 68, and Tanzania is 72. Not really something that you want to strive towards. So is sweet potato really such a good food for you or your brain or for your nutritional requirements? I'm not so sure.
So it's not good for cognitive ability.
No. So do you think we should eat sweet potatoes?
I'm good. Well, then moving along, the next thing on the list is they are very good for your immune system.
Oh my God, again, another claim. I can't believe it. Like they are popping up out of the woodworks.
I'm getting the feeling that the next few claims are basically diminishing themselves based on what we've already talked about.
Yeah.
That the vitamins and nutrients and all those different things are not quite what they are amped up to be.
Well, when it comes to immune system, when it comes to cancer, all the claims are actually based on the fact that there's a lot of vitamin A in sweet potatoes. So they're supposed to be, yes. So the extrapolation is, since vitamin A is needed for mucosa, needed for for immune system function, then automatically sweet potato works for the immune system, and it will help with anything that is immune system related, like cancer. This is not true. Not true, because immune system is just not based on one nutrient, vitamin A. It also requires a whole kaleidoscope of the nutrients like zinc and selenium and B12 and vitamin D especially. None of this is present in sweet potatoes in any amounts or in sufficient amounts. Now, when you think about is there any other food that may beat sweet potatoes in its nutritional equivalents? I just reached out and looked, and again, I didn't find it on Google page 1. I found it on Google page 27, because nobody wants to talk about it. Look at it, beef liver. Beef liver is an extraordinary powerhouse, and yes, it does have every single nutrient out there for immune system. So if you want to have a strong immune system, I don't think I would recommend sweet potatoes.
Yeah, so from there, I guess the immune system is another bust.
Oh yeah.
What about eyes and good vision?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
Yes.
Eyes and good vision is vitamin A.
Yes, it is.
Dependent to some degree.
Absolutely, yes, it is. So it's also Zax.
It's another pickle.
It's another pickle, but it's another zeaxanthin and lutein, and they also say that sweet potatoes are very high in these pigments, which are the yellow pigments in the flesh. But it's not always the case, because the variety, there are about 4,000 different varieties of sweet potatoes, believe it or not, sweet potatoes alone. So they vary in color and vary in nutrients and vary on agricultural practices and the soil quantity. So when it comes to the labs and the real life, it's not the same. Plus, whatever you think about, okay, it's high in antioxidants, zeaxanthin, lutein, it's not really a lot in the sweet potatoes, and whether they get absorbed or whether they get utilized is another story. For now, there is no conclusive evidence that sweet potatoes actually boost eyesight health. I don't know if there is anything, unless you have vitamin A deficiency. That's why your vision failed to begin with. But in North America, we don't have vitamin A deficiency so much, so I don't think we should even bother with sweet potatoes and improving the vision that way.
Right. All right. Nutritionally, it doesn't sound so good.
No.
But there's one major point here. It is recommended for diabetics because it stabilizes sugar.
Yeah, I heard that, and it really puzzled me for some time, because there's so much carbohydrates in it, and I thought, this is crazy. Just one portion, which is that 5.5 inch of sweet potato, has 20 grams of carbohydrates, and I thought, oh my God, how much does it convert into sugar? So when you think about it, it's about 7 packets of sugar there. And I thought, how is it possible even to recommend 7 packets of sugar to a diabetic? It's very, very inappropriate. And then I had another thought. Well, who eats one portion, which is kind of like a half a cup of sweet potatoes? Usually people do 2-3 times this much.
You would think so, yeah.
You would think so. So when you give something like, when you tell the diabetic, go and eat sweet potatoes, they won't eat just half a cup. They will eat a regular portion like everybody else, which means instead of 7 packets, they will eat 14 packets or 20 packets of sugar in that sitting. How is that even healthy? I don't know. But I do understand that they talk about low glycemic index. You need to actually have the potatoes boiled. Now, who on earth in North America eats boiled potatoes? It's just, how can you stomach
Especially
that?
sweet potatoes.
But you can't, it just falls apart and it becomes watery. It's just not palatable. So everybody does baking or roasting. And guess what happens to glycemic index when you roast a potato? It goes up, it doubles up. And what does this mean? It's worse than sugar. It's far worse than if you eat pure sugar. It's just as simple as that. This is just an awful way of telling a diabetic, eat it. But, have you heard of insulin index?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for those who don't know what insulin index is a measuring of how high insulin goes up after ingesting specific food. So it happens that in sweet potatoes, the insulin index is very high. It's as high as close to glucose. When you eat sweet potatoes, your insulin spikes up, and that prevents blood sugar from going up. The reason why sweet potatoes are recommended to diabetics is because of this high insulin index, which means, well, maybe high insulin index might be not that good for most people, because high insulin means you put on weight, but in diabetics also might mean you end up with reactive hypoglycemia, which means reactive hypoglycemia means you end up with lower blood sugar after ingesting of certain foods. And true, the labs and the studies do show that after 30 to 90 minutes, you might end up with lower blood sugar than when you had before you start ingesting the sweet potatoes. So your sugar goes up with the sweet potatoes and then end up lower. That's not always the case, but watch out. Now, I would not recommend to a diabetic to have hypoglycemic reaction. Neither I would recommend to anybody to ingest sweet potatoes to have a reactive hypoglycemia. It's complete nonsense. You can manage your diabetes in a much better way. If you are forced for some reason to eat carbohydrates, and your healthcare provider tells you eat carbohydrates, and you're afraid not to, then yet sweet potatoes might be a better choice than the white potatoes or rice. But if you really know how to manage your blood sugar, sweet potatoes are probably not going to be on your menu. There's also some claim that potatoes have resistant starch. They do, but not sweet potatoes.
What is resistant starch?
Resistant starch is a starch that it doesn't break down when you're digesting it, so it's used for mostly people who want to control their sugar, to slow down sugar release in the blood and reduce this sugar absorption from the gut.
So that keeps your sugar levels down by default, because you have a very slow absorption process.
That's right.
Gotcha.
Or you absorb less, right? It's something resistant to breakdown.
So it sounds like a good thing, again, for diabetics.
It would be very good for diabetic. The problem is that sweet potatoes don't have any resistant starch. That's why they are always mushy.
And it's usually something that is sort of refried even, right?
Yeah,
like
but not
refried beans or refried white potatoes.
Yeah. But the amount of resistant starch in sweet potatoes is so negligible. It's just
not really
It's
considerable.
close to zero. It's actually 0.08 grams per 100 grams, which means
Sweet
nothing.
potatoes. The next claim is sweet potatoes help with weight loss because they're very satiating.
And yes, that's true. They are very satiating. It's because they are very watery. They retain a lot of water, and they are very fibrous. So when you end up with water and fiber in your gut, you feel very full, and that's great. That's great. And in fact, they have about rating of 250 on the satiating scale. Where when you take a liver, you have only 150 on the satiating scale, which means that gram per gram, sweet potatoes are much more satiating. You'll feel much more fuller and happier with the sweet potatoes than with the liver. The problem is that when you feel full with something that is very low in nutrients, you end up with malnutrition.
The final claim is that they support gut health due to high fiber content.
Yes.
So what about that then?
Yeah, they
At
say,
least that has to be something.
yeah, they say that fiber is necessary for gut health, and that's another baloney because it's not. This new studies show that people, when they avoid fiber, actually go to the bathroom better, and they have a much better absorption rate of the nutrients that they eat. So I'm questioning even the necessity of the fiber in the food to begin with, and especially for people who have tendency to bloating, they have indigestion, they have malnutrition, they have any kind of gut integrity issues, leaky gut, candida, IBS, IBD. Really, I'm not sure if these people should even be on a high fiber diet, but that's individual.
And so I think there's also some list of anti-nutrients.
Yes, there are a lot of anti-nutrients in the sweet potatoes. One of them is oxalate. A lot of people don't know what oxalate is. It's a spiky-like substance. It's a crystal that causes quite a bit of damage. It can cause quite a bit of leaky gut, arthritis, joint pain, even it seems to be accumulating in the brain. It's implicated in some mental disorders, as well as it can be implicated in atherosclerosis. There's a lot of research to it. You can just
The most basic thing is kidney stones, but it actually goes a lot further than that.
Oh, for sure. You know, when you ask a medical professional about oxalate, the only thing that pops up in their head is the kidney stones, because this is calcium oxalate is the major kidney former. But recently we realized that kidneys are not the only organs that accumulate it. There's a lot of these organs that do. Thyroid is one of them. If you're oxalate sensitive, or you don't even know what oxalate is, assume that you are oxalate sensitive, and this thing is extremely high in oxalates, which means watch out. It can accumulate in thyroid, gut, muscles, joint, brain, you name it. Every single organ will accumulate it. And what will that lead to? If you have any pain of stiffness, watch out. Maybe sweet potatoes or anything that with oxalates is not your friend. Now, another anti-nutrient, which is very troublesome anti-nutrient, is antitrypsin. And you know what trypsin is.
Mm-hmm.
It's an enzyme. The protein that is in the sweet potato, 80% of it is in the form of antitrypsin, which means what it does, it inhibits trypsin production, which means not only you're not going to break down food, but also it irritates pancreas, because now pancreas wants to put out much more of the trypsin because it's feedback driven. Studies have shown that it irritates pancreas and causes multiplication of the cells, may lead to cancer growth.
So we got oxalates and
antitrypsin, yes.
And then from there it goes to phytic acid.
It's phytic acid. And then phytic acid exhibits a fiber-like anti-nutrients activities, which means it comes in and it locks in and it binds to nutrients that otherwise you would be absorbing. I just wanted to point out another thing is about pesticides, because nobody talks about pesticides on here versus pesticides on the liver. So I went online and I checked. Do you know that every second potato, every second sample of sweet potatoes had pesticide on it? And this pesticide was actually listed as a probable carcinogen. So I checked whether the liver has it, because they said liver has toxicity. There's a lot of stuff toxic in the liver. I checked how many pesticides were there, and when they were testing, zero, zilch, nada. So when it comes to toxicity, there's another point to it, you know.
So sweet potatoes is not for anyone?
Well, if you like sweet potatoes and you use it occasionally here and there, it's not a problem at all. But if you if you eat it because you think it's a staple, it should be a staple, it's a superfood and do you good, I don't think so. If you're a diabetic and you want to manage your blood sugar better, I don't think you should be on a high carb diet. If you have a gut problem, I don't think you should be on a high fiber diet. I don't think you should have anti-nutrients in your food if you have malnourishment. I don't think I would recommend sweet potatoes to anything. It's more fun than a superfood. And let's leave it at that.